Feeling stuck or unfulfilled? Searching for more meaning in your work and life? Wondering what's next? You're not alone, and you're in the right place. This is Focus on Why, the podcast that turns reflection into action. I'm Amy Rennoldson, and each week I dive deep with guests who've chosen to live and work with purpose. Together we explore what drives them, shapes their decisions, and gives their life meaning. Through real stories and honest conversations, you'll discover how to gain clarity, make confident choices, and create a life that truly matters. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we start, have you read my book, Focus on Why, Create a Purposeful Way of Life? It's an uplifting guide to living with purpose, clarity, and meaning, and it's co-authored with my late grandfather. Available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook, all the links you need to purchase your copy today are in the show notes. Today on Focus on Why, I'm joined by Victoria Rennoldson. Victoria, welcome.
Thank you so much, Amy. I am absolutely delighted to be here, and I'm very much looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, well, me too. And we have a little thank you first, which is to go to Kay Korsh for introducing us. So thank you, Kay. Absolutely love being introduced to people because I don't know your story. And we will be at some point, maybe not, we will be diving into what it is that has led us together by Kay. Who knows? But my first question, what is it you're focusing on right now?
So I'm focusing on right now sharing my book, Become a Global Leader, even. This came out last week at the time of this recording, and it is a long held dream that I want to bring this book to the world and to share it. So I've been very, very busy working on that, sharing that, talking, connecting, and having some brilliant conversations as a result of the book.
Well, congratulations. As a fellow author, I know just how much is involved to getting a book over the line. And I'm not just talking about the publication element, I'm talking about the initial getting writing and getting through imposter syndrome of like, who am I to write a book? Did you have any of that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, the idea of writing a book had always been in my mind. And, from my earliest ages, I've always been a writer. I liked scribbling little stories and poems. And I had, this dream of writing a book one day. And life took me in slightly different directions. So initially through a corporate marketing career, and the book dream sort of went away a little bit. But when I started my business 10 years ago, helping global professionals with how to step up into their leadership, how to communicate confidently and connect, I knew the book would come, but it took 10 years. And here we are now. And certainly the idea of committing to it and getting on with it was something that it just seemed to drift for years. I had it on my mind, I had it on my vision board right beside me, but somehow to get to the end of each year and just go, it's not happened. Why is it not happening? And there was a moment almost exactly 12 months ago from this date we're recording when I just decided it had to be this year. And part of that significance was, yes, my 10 years in business, but it was also that now was the right time. I felt it was with everything that was going on in my world, in the world, with the people that I help. This was a moment that a book needed to be born.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, right time and with the right mindset, you've delivered it. What's important to you around becoming a global leader?
The people that I help are people who are often fantastic at what they do. So whether they are working in large corporates as I used to do in my previous career, or whether they're working in small organizations, or even if they're business owners, they are already amazingly talented and good at what they do. But I describe them as the people who've got the glint in their eye. They know they can go for more. They know that there's an ambition and a dream in their mind that they would love to achieve. And the connector is that they are able to move with their experience and their skills in theory towards that goal. But the reality is the way that they're showing up, the way that they speak up, the way that they communicate, connect with people is not at the moment unlocking that dream for them. And they know it's holding them back. And they get quite frustrated, quite stuck in that feeling of they know they can do it in theory, but they are not able to do it by themselves. And this book is part of this, helping those people around the world to really go for it, to become a global leader, to expand themselves and be that fullest version of themselves.
It sounds like you've treaded this path already.
That is a great question. And I absolutely, bear down into this idea of self leadership. And this is a journey that I've been on myself by growing myself through the challenges of initially a corporate career and navigating that, and then realizing that wasn't my path and that was totally unexpected. I had completely expected to be in corporate life and climb the ladder and do that for the rest of my life. But it was my time there that sparked the ideas that eventually led to my business. And those ideas were that I was working in large global teams and I could see where there were conversations going on, but not real connection, where there were meetings happening, but the communication actually wasn't flowing. People were talking at each other, but not with each other. And I also could see in those teams amazing individuals, people who were based in different locations around the world that I was working with, who were, again, very talented and very good, but weren't quite breaking through to the next levels in leadership. And they didn't always feel the most comfortable and confident to speak up. They were very aware that sometimes English wasn't their first language and they didn't have the nuances to communicate their real thoughts. And these were the ideas, the nuggets that really led me to what I do now. But for me to step from that path, which I was so sure was my path, to then being a business owner and not knowing what that roadmap looked like, for somebody who's quite planned, quite likes organization, likes to know where we're going, that was a really scary move. And so part of this path, becoming a global leader, has been my path, growing myself. And that's not a journey I'm finished with. I'm still growing. I'm still evolving as a global leader, being in more places, speaking on more global stages and in global conferences, in global podcasts. So this is my path now too.
So, what I just want to understand is, were you aware of these conversations without connection and these communication breakdowns where people were talking at each other when you were there in situ, or was it when you stepped out and then reflected that you were then seeing that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think that I've always had a sense of a real strong connection to communication and culture. And it really rolls back to my heritage, my roots, my childhood. So I grew up in a what I call a very, I'm going to use real inverted commas here, British family, in the sense that we spoke English at home. Both my parents were British, but actually my roots were my grandparents were Austrian-Hungarian. They were refugees. They came to London. And when they came to London, they decided to establish their cultural identity as very British. So they didn't speak German or Hungarian to my father. They changed the surname to sound very, very English. And they didn't feel either safe or comfortable to express their cultural identity. So I was really aware of this as a kid growing up. I had these grandparents who had funny accents, who, I knew were speaking English to me, but in a different way. And then I started learning languages at school. And I got super interested in language and actually studied German. And so spoke German with my grandmother sometimes. I went on to learn Russian as well at university. And it was when my experiences of living, studying, working abroad that I started to pick up my intuition around communication and culture. And I really started to understand that the words that you use are not communication in itself. Communication is the facial expression, the tone of voice. It's not about translating word by word or even having perfect vocabulary or perfect grammar. It's actually about trying to create a connection with somebody and being understood, even if it's not perfect. And these kind of insights from my childhood, from my studies, really came with me into my first career. And so I think I was aware, to answer your question, in the moment, intuitively, communication was either happening or it wasn't. Or there was this person was saying yes, but actually they didn't mean that. They meant no. They meant actually, well, they might have meant no, not now, or no, or I wish it was yes, but it's actually no. And I could pick these things up and I could sense them in a way I realized that other people couldn't. And that was because I'd learned languages and had that struggle of expressing myself in other languages and understood that the cultural aspects of how people say things. So I think, yes, I had some intuition at the moment, but putting the real preciseness of how to identify it and what to do with that certainly came later as I moved into my business.
Did you ever get a chance, Victoria, to speak to your grandparents around the belonging element of being in this country?
I wish I had. I really wish I had. So my grandparents died when I was 11 and 13. I was 13 when my grandmother died. And I kind of these these ideas around what it meant to them to not be able to belong and not to have their cultural identity are really only reflections that I've realized in the last years, actually, being an adult, being a parent, doing the work that I do and realizing and joining up all the dots around this. And for me, this is really poignant as well, coming back to why this book now. I mean, there are many reasons for this book, but one very personal reason is that very sadly, I started writing this book, and then my dad, actually, who was the son of these grandparents, died earlier this year. And I was only a few chapters into writing, which, as you know, as an author, is a pretty tricky moment because you're only just getting into the flow of what to write and how to write it, how to structure your writing. And I write a lot, articles, blogs, social media posts, but writing a book is something else. You're trying to discover how to write it as in your own voice and how to make it work. And I was only just getting going. And of course, with my dad dying, everything stopped. Everything stopped. I had to be out in my business. I had to be with my family. I had to really just connect back to my roots, I suppose, in that moment. And although my dad was not a speaker of the languages, although he didn't spend time in those cultures, he was a person who loved people. He was fascinated by conversations, understanding other people's roots. And he did a lot of digging on his own roots. He spent a lot of time in his retirement looking into family history. So when I felt eventually able to return to the book and to my work actually altogether, I, that initial moment of coming back after a death, which I understand is for many people actually an experience, all of us probably face that or at some point, right? So this is not a unique experience, but initially I didn't know what to write anymore. I didn't know how to go forward with my work. So I thought, when you're faced with death, you're kind of thinking, what is that? Like, what am I meant to do? Is there any purpose to this? Is there any kind of reason to keep going? And I'll be honest, the first few days, I really didn't know. And when I sat and wrote, I just tried to write anything, even though I knew it didn't make much sense. I just tried to keep going. But when it clicked back in, I realized what was important to me was, yes, writing this book for others to help these aspiring global leaders around the world, but it was also important for my dad, for legacy. And, that book is dedicated to my dad. But beyond that, what I've realized is through death, I've realized how valuable every single moment of my day is. So important to me now. And so that was the fire, and it literally was the fire that was energizing me to finish this book. And I was determined, even though I'd sort of paused it and I was struggling to get back to it, that I was going to finish this book this year. I was going to write it and it was going to get out there. And to me, this is part of legacy, connecting to legacy of past and history and my roots, but also connecting to my legacy for the future when I'm not here anymore. And it can still help people beyond that moment. So, this has been a really important moment, an important year for me. And the book very much connects to that.
I love that. And it is such a motivator to embrace legacy. And with that, knowing that you were 11, 13 when your grandparents died, what are the conversations that you might want to have with your children and your children's children to ensure that some of the moments that you are experiencing are not lost?
I think that's a brilliant question. I think bearing in mind how influential the ideas of belonging, roots, culture are to me, we've already started this process of process is the wrong word, but the started the idea of connecting our children to their roots. So we've taken them to Vienna to meet very distant cousins, but doesn't matter. They are still family, they're still connected. I have also been going through the process, which has only recently become an opportunity to gain Austrian citizenship for myself and my children. So, with the idea of connecting to our roots. And my son is a very passionate learner of German. And so, whether that goes somewhere for him or that is an interest and a passion for the moment, for me, this is also really a moment that, again, creates a circle where he's connected into me because I speak German with him where I can, to my grandparents. And that is part of this, right? It's part of knowing who you are, where you've come from. But also, what I really want for the children and my potential grandchildren is for them to understand the idea of how the power of connecting to people, understanding people, being curious in the world, the conversations and making space for conversations that really unlocks really, special moments that you couldn't have had if you just sat and looked at your phone on wherever you are and just hid away from the connection. So to me, these are the kinds of ideas that I'm wanting to instill in them, and I really hope that they take forward as well.
And you mentioned, Victoria, right at the beginning that since launching the book, being a long held dream, it has instigated all of these brilliant conversations. Share with us what has happened as a result so far. I know it's only very early days.
Indeed. So the book launched just literally over a week ago. And what I have been so moved by and touched by is the level of support and cheer and warmth and love. I mean, really love from the people around me. And of course, that is family, but that is also the people that I work with directly, my clients, but also clients I haven't worked with in years who've reached out, who've connected, who've said, "Congratulations, I'd love to get your book." I had an event last Thursday where I was in a room and everybody in that room was connected to me somehow. Clients, former and current partners, collaborators, and it just felt amazing. But also my greatest dream for that event, which we did, was about helping them to connect to each other, to meet each other, to share leadership ideas, to share their dreams for leadership and what they would love to achieve in the world. And then things like this, Amy, like having amazing conversations with people deeply, one to one, I've been incredibly lucky and grateful to be going on lots of podcasts recently to talk about what's coming up, the book, but also why it matters and who it can help and what it's there for. And for me, this is so important, being able to share this work, being able to help more people globally. Because ultimately, I am one person. And although I work one to one coaching, I work in global organizations with teams, I also want to spread this work further so that people can also benefit from this. Even if we never get to meet, they can still read the book, they can still hear my tone of voice through the words that I've written, and there will be an audiobook one day as well. For me, that's really important as well, that they get to benefit from that. Somebody can pick up this book, it can make a real difference to their career, and it can help them accelerate their career dreams as well.
I've been listening and hearing some real key words that have come into this conversation. There's been legacy, expansion, connection, love, communication, dreams, belonging, support. Tell me, how many of those are core values for you?
I mean, at the heart of it all are people. For me, people are what makes everything connect and join up. And, one of the things that I'm deeply, deeply passionate about is I see so much happening in the world and so much conversation going on about AI and all the technical evolution and everything that's happening in the exciting innovation space around that. And rightly so. There is absolute reason why this is important. And yet, I really strongly, passionately believe that is a tool and an enabler for us. And we should be absolutely thinking about what does it mean to have real conversations, particularly in the workplace? What does it mean to speak human to human? And I think this is the reason why I'm really passionate about this is that I talk to leaders and I hear them talking about how they feel their teams are disengaged. I talk to people who are literally running from one meeting to another virtually or in person. And there is higher number of meetings, shorter meetings, but focus is on efficiency, productivity, getting into the business. The idea of sitting down and having real conversations, the idea of asking somebody, how are you? But no, really, how are you? Like that isn't coming up in the same way that it used to be able to. And I think for me, what I'm really passionate about is helping people to recognize their communication, their ability to connect across cultures when they're particularly working in global contexts. These are their human capabilities, and these deeply, deeply matter in these times. Yes, the AI and the tech skills are exciting, but the research says there are huge gaps opening up in people's human capabilities, in their ability to relate to each other in a human way. And in fact, if we get it right, the AI should be a facilitator to speed up work that we shouldn't be doing and enabling more conversations, enabling more time for that human connection. And that's my great dream. That is what I would want for the workplace today.
And linking back to purpose, and you mentioned that you struggled when you were coming back from grieving, and I mean the grieving is ongoing, but coming back from that period to get writing again, and there was a reason for you to keep going, to write this book, to dedicate it to your father. This work, what is the reason for being to keep going? I mean, I know I can see the passion, but what is so important for you about this?
I experience that every single day when I work with people. When I hear back the impact it's having, and that's real and tangible, that people, it's not theory at all. These are people who are telling me they got the promotion. There is somebody in my world who is telling me that they're being considered for their second promotion. And yet a year ago, she was holding herself back from applying for the first one. There are people who are now suddenly on TV being interviewed by the media for their expertise when they felt nervous about presentations and being able to stand up at the front of the room. When people achieve their leadership dreams and they tell me what's happened, and more importantly, I just remember these words so distinctly. Somebody said to me, "The other people in my team have noticed. They've said to me, something's changed, something's different in the way you're speaking." And I say, that's it. That is what it's about. Of course, for me, this is about global impact as well, being able to help people globally. But ultimately, it also comes down to individual stories, individual successes. And when I hear that, and I hear people that are achieving what leadership dreams look like to them, this is what gets me fired up and excited because I realize the power of this. And, this is an area that sometimes in the past was referred to as soft skills or the skills which were not sort of almost non-essential, the add-ons. And that term soft skills, I talk about it in the book. It really, it's such a disservice to what this is about, which are about essential human skills. If you do not have these skills, it's actually really difficult to be able to achieve your dreams. It's really difficult, whatever you're doing, whether you're in corporate, small businesses, whether you're running you're a solopreneur, if you do not have the communication skills, the connection skills, you don't have those people skills, it will be very difficult for you to succeed, no matter how great you are in your talent. And that's what it's really and ultimately about. Realizing that this work truly has impact at both the individual level, but also I work with some really large multinational organizations. And I recognize when this works, it really works. It enables people to work better together, to feel good at work and to deliver their results.
I hear you. And the work that we do has many crossovers in terms of how to measure the intangible and to recognize the impact it's having. When you were mentioning that, that's it, that's exactly what it is when you're getting that feedback in the moment. And going back to you saying that so many leaders are saying their teams are disengaged, many times from my experience, the purpose gaps lie in the fact that people aren't able to recognize when it's happening, and so miss the moments of impact and miss the impact they are having externally or even internally within the team or even for themselves. And this is a disconnect on a different level that we're talking about here.
I think that's right. I think people get disconnected for lots of reasons. And I think sometimes it's they've lost their purpose. They're not really sure what they're there for or what they're wanting to achieve. Or maybe they can see the next step, but not beyond that. But also, I think there's a real disconnection that's going on. I sort of work with teams that often are based across multiple regions and countries. And this idea of remote hybrid working, we have such brilliant collaboration tools. But another principle from my book is a collaboration tool is not communication. It's not, you have to be quite intentional to create communication. And of course, communication is two-way. It's listening and receiving, it's listening and expressing. There has to be understanding between you, which is where the principle of cultural intelligence is so important, being able to understand the nuances of how people might express themselves differently in different cultures, whether that's more direct or indirect, whether people feel comfortable when you say, oh, just unmute and say what you think. Some people from some cultures are very happy to do that. Other people, as I know from other cultures, are really not. That's not a psychologically safe invitation to do that. So then you have to get very creative to engage people, to connect people, particularly having to do that across a remote environment virtually. So you have to think very intentionally about how do you create connection when you don't see somebody in person, when you live in the rectangle, and sometimes you don't even see other people. They've got their videos, their screens switched off, and it's just black screen. So this is really also a skill in itself, being a leader that knows how to connect, to engage with people that they're not meeting every day, and understanding how to bring the team together.
Yeah, it's a challenge in itself. And you mentioned right at the beginning about some of the people not having English as their first language, and again, the nuances that are involved with those. And you then mentioned about the confidence to speak up. Now, what I'm hearing is it's not just confidence to speak up, it's also, is it appropriate for me to speak up? So it's not a confidence thing, it's more of a respect.
It can be. And I think sometimes people don't feel like they've got the space to speak up. So one of the things that can happen in diverse multicultural teams is that you might only hear from the most extrovert dominant voices. I regularly have conversations with people who are asking me questions like, but won't I come across as too arrogant if I speak up? Or would I come across as too pushy? So I think, again, there are cultural nuances and what does confidence look like? What does it mean to speak up? And so for people who are leaders, it's really important to allow space and to understand how you invite connection and contribution and conversation. And for individuals, also knowing your cultural style, knowing how culture is influencing your communication style and interaction, and in what circumstances you would adapt, and in what circumstances would you not. Actually, you are, this is important to you. It's part of your way of being, part of your personality. And so then that needs a conversation really about then how you can do that. Conversation perhaps with a line manager, or having a conversation with a wider team about how to be inclusive in the communication around the team.
There's so many elements here, and every time I ask you a question and you share what you do, there is like, oh, I could go and explore this route or that route, and I've just pulled on a few strands here and there. Purpose has showed up a couple of times here and there in essence, but what does purpose mean to you in your work?
Purpose to me, and this is from a very, very personal point of view, is knowing this idea of knowing every moment that life is precious. I think this has come into sharp relief for me today, having this conversation. This is the crystal that's really kind of shining through in this conversation. And I recognize that, I'm here to do this work. I'm here to share it globally. And for me to do that, I need to also grow myself and expand myself as a global leader. I think this is such a critical part of my motivation. And do I have the whole plan worked out? No, but I don't need to. And I think what I have learned through my own work and how I also help others is that you don't necessarily need to have the full plan, or need to know that it's some really grand expression of a huge vision. It's not about that. It's about what matters to you, what's individual to you. And the most important thing that you need to do is take that first step and know that once you've taken one step, the next step will come, and then the next one. And I know that I don't always feel very comfortable on that journey. It's not easy. And I know for others, it's not comfortable stepping forward when everything's not quite worked out. But it's when you know why you're doing it, you do it. And that's the key thing. The feeling of confidence, the feeling of, okay, I now know what I'm doing, that comes later. It doesn't come before.
And for life being precious for you, that crystal shining through sharp relief, what has given you the clarity in this conversation, particularly for that to really stand above others?
I think, you've asked me some really interesting questions today. And I had no idea where we were going to go with some of these stories. And I'm very conscious. I've decided to share some of the more personal sides of my why here today. But I think the ultimate is it's sort of like the prism that happened this year, let's describe it as this, was the moment when my dad died. And although that has been devastating, that has been an incredible low and tough moment in my life and others' lives, it's also made things very sharp and clear for me about the reason why I do what I do and what I'm here to achieve. And I think this is something that I've recognized, that this duality between life and death exists all the time. It's just we don't notice it until somebody dies around us. And I think that is something that I'm really taking away from this conversation that I kind of knew in my heart, but I think I've really fully expressed it here today. So thank you, Amy.
Oh, no, thank you. And how will it change the conversations that you will have going forward?
I really value conversations. They're very precious to me. Every conversation, whether it's somebody I've met before and known very, very well, or somebody new, really matter to me. But I think what I've realized how important those conversations are to prioritize. So it is easy to get busy. It is easy to say, well, I'm too busy to meet, or there's a lot going on right now. Well, let's meet later. But I think what I really see going forward after this conversation today is, again, just that commitment to the conversations, commitment to people. This is ultimately what it's about for me.
And will you have a filter to prioritize?
I think that's a good question, a good challenge because right, I'm one person. I can't meet everybody. The way that I think about this is actually my energy flows and I know when I'm in thinking mode, when I'm really at my best with creativity, when I'm at my best in terms of conversation and sociability. And so I suppose that is probably the filter. I can't spend all day, every day in conversations as much as I'd love to. But I think that is the key way that I make my decisions. I know that my conversation connection time is best in this zone, in this time, which is exactly now. So which is perfect.
Brilliant. Well, in terms of connection, how would a listener reach out and connect with you, Victoria?
Well, first of all, LinkedIn is my home. So, LinkedIn, my personal profile, Victoria Rennoldson. I would absolutely love it if the themes I've talked about today, the ideas connect. Please go check out my book, Become a Global Leader. You can see that on my website, which is www.culturecuppa.com/book. And equally, I have a podcast too. So I think I've got some links for you, but hopefully we can share that on the show notes. But the podcast is all about themes we talked about here today: leadership, confidence, communication, and connection.
And your podcast name?
Is cultural communication confidence.
Fantastic. Well, all those links will absolutely be in the show notes. So go check them out and buy Victoria's book, go listen to her podcast and connect with her on LinkedIn, her home alternative home, the other family that she spends her time with. So my goodness, what a beautiful conversation. And I am so thrilled that you have your own reflection with action as a result of this conversation to embed deeper work for yourself and to have a clarity of thought within this time frame. This is what it's all about, is that when we get the opportunity to dive deeper around the topic or even sort of on the peripheries of purpose, it does open up just so many beautiful paths that we can explore and pursue and know when they are the right ones to do so. So thank you. It is with my absolute pleasure that we have had this conversation. And have you got some final words, please?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for your very kind and thoughtful questions, which I think also enables amazing conversations. Having been listening to your podcast recently, I do think you have this way of asking the questions that allows the conversation to flow. And I suppose my final words really are about, we've touched on so many themes here today, but I think the very personal one is about legacy and impact, knowing why you're here, making sure that you're valuing the life that we have. And, from my perspective, this is something that has really shifted a lot for me this year. I hope that's helpful to others to really value their lives, to value not wasting moments, not wasting time, and really focus on the work that you love. Do the work that you are here to do and make that difference.
That's a wrap for today, but the journey doesn't end here. Share your takeaways, leave a review, or post your insights. Your voice helps others discover the value of these stories. Want to dive deeper into purpose? Check the show notes for ways to work with me. Get a copy of my book or to sign up for Friday Focus, my weekly newsletter packed with clarity and inspiration. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.